Well, good morning, everybody. Response. It's good. Looking good already. This is second in our series called What Are You For? And it's kind of a 6-part series, so you're just getting into it. If you weren't here last week, don't worry. Just go and listen to it online. It won't affect what we're hearing this week. You don't need to have been here last week. It's good to be here every week, by the way. Then you get the kind of the flow of the thing. So when I was preparing this, which is a few weeks ago now, one of the things that really kind of struck me was everything that was going on in the news. And since I wrote this, it's kind of got worse. And so I was thinking, like, what do you not sometimes wake up in the morning, or you've seen like newspaper headlines, or you see the news, or you hear the news on the radio, or people start telling you about what's going on, and you see this stuff on Facebook, and you think, what a mess. What a mess. And then there's other stuff, and you think, well, how can they actually think that's okay? How do people get themselves in a position where they think that's all right? What are they thinking? How can they live with themselves? And then sometimes you think, this world's getting worse and worse. Why can't somebody just fix it? What is wrong with our politicians? What is wrong with our world? What is wrong? Why can't we fix this thing? Why can't we just stop it just getting worse? And sometimes when you see this from our kind of Christian perspective, and this is kind of, where most of us will be thinking, is that being a Christian in this world sometimes feels like you're swimming against the tide, like my shirt, swimming against the tide. They're all going downwards. All right, okay. But obviously, the shirt is the highlight of my preach this morning. Just so you know, Roger and Olive were with us when I bought this shirt, and they helped me choose it, and they're very pleased with themselves. Okay, let's get that over with. Anyway, as I was saying, isn't it like everybody's lost their reason? Like they focus on all sorts of things that just seem off kilter. And in the midst of that, you think, well, you can feel hopeless. But more often than not, rather than feeling hopeless, we actually feel powerless. Like we'd like to do something, but we don't know what to do. And I don't know about you. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me that feels like that. But a lot of you nodding. And so I think that most of us feel like that quite a lot of the time. That something's wrong and somebody needs to fix it, and we feel powerless. And, when you add in your own challenges, the challenges in your own life, family, relationships, work, your job, and it just can sometimes seem overwhelming, can't it? And then it's worse when you kind of hear people talking, or you see social media or Facebook, and it looks like other people have got life nailed, and you're left with the bent nails, and no matter how hard you hit them, they won't go in the wood. And it sometimes it can feel like that, can't it? And if we feel like that, it's often because we have been trained, really subtly trained, to see life through a particular lens. Because the world is set on negative. The world is set on negative. And when you kind of listen to what people, psychologists and people who research this thing, what they're showing in their research is that for a couple of decades now, our society, our land, our country, and other countries have been facing a growing tide of hopelessness, of anxiety, and purposelessness. That's a hard word to say. And that is true. And if you don't feel that, it's likely you're over the age of 40. And I'll explain why that is. But amongst our teens and 20s, this is the big issue. Anxiety, hopelessness, powerlessness, purposelessness. And this is a recent piece of research. So a recent research paper found this, and this is all people. 19% of people that they surveyed, it's a random survey, 19% of people feel hopeless. That's almost 1 in 5, isn't it? People feel without hope in their life. When you actually break that down and you look at that just in terms of kind of 18 to 25-year-olds, 32% of those 18 to 25-year-olds feel hopeless. So something's happening, something's gone wrong. And when you look at that, I'll show you. I'm going to show you quite a bit of research this morning, so you need to be kind of good at graphs. I'll try and explain them. But if you didn't like graphs at school, this is your time to kind of catch up and get with it. But this is some research that was done in the US. And some of this is absolutely shocking. So this is the percentage of people who report high levels of anxiety. And what you can see is that, and that's why we kind of don't notice it, down in the 50 pluses and probably 35 to 49s as well, it's fairly stable. 35s are tipping up a little bit. When you get to the younger age groups, like the 18-25-year-olds, there's been a 139% increase in anxiety since 2010. And, you know, that's kind of almost mirrored in the next age group up to 26 to 34s. And that in itself, I think, would be shocking. And we could kind of write that off and say, well, you know, that's the United States. It's probably better here because there are a bunch of weirdos in the States and all that sort of stuff. But before we write it off, I think we have to kind of face up to ourselves and say, is the reason why this isn't concerning me? Is the reason why I'm not doing anything about this, or I'm not even aware of it, because I'm in those bottom two groups? And, you know, if you're in the bottom group, you haven't noticed any change in your anxiety. In fact, you're probably pretty calm and you're feeling generally good about life or okay with life. Just, it's like it's always been. And even if you're in the next group up, you know, the next to bottom group, what you're experiencing and your peer group is experiencing is kind of background anxiety, low levels of anxiety right across the board. But once you get to the younger generations, 35 downwards, you've got this massive spike in anxiety levels. Now, we can dismiss that and go, well, so what's that got to do with me? What's that got to do with me? Because it's easy to do nothing when it's not your problem. And that's the thing with the gospel, isn't it? We found Jesus, so it's kind of easy to do nothing because it's not our problem anymore. We just got to enjoy Jesus and grow. But for the rest of the world, it's a huge problem. And it reflects itself in this culture that is being created that is damaging and affecting a whole generation younger than us. And maybe some of you guys in the room, because I'm looking around the room, some of you are in those bits where it's spiked. And if you're not experiencing it, loads of your friends are experiencing it. Okay, so I'll switch it to English. I'll switch it to England from America because we don't, you know, who knows about these Americans? This is anxiety and depression in England, ages 11 to 15. It's just these spikes from 2010 and onwards, particularly amongst girls. Yeah, it's affecting boys, but it's really massively affected on girls. So you see the spike in anxiety levels, bigger for girls, and you see this spike in depression, again, bigger for girls. That's because this is connected to our identity, the way we see ourselves. And guys respond differently to girls, but it's affecting both. Let me give you some more information, again from the UK, good old UK. Happiness trends. Let's have a look at how happy this generation is. Its happiness has fallen off a cliff. Again, you could go, well, it's not my problem. But what are we going to do about it if Jesus said, actually, this is your problem because I told you to go and reach people and make disciples and help them and change this pattern. What's evident, I think, from all of that when I was looking at those things is we live in a really unhealthy culture if you're under the age of 35. A really unhealthy culture. And that, to me, is alarming. I don't know if it's alarming to you. How many of you are aware of these patterns? How many of you have heard about this? Well, that's really interesting because actually only 4 people have heard about it or were aware of it. 2 of you, well, you're all outside those brackets. Yeah? Oh, Joe's in it. Okay. Anyway, so, is this hopeless? Like, should you bother? Are you going to go home and go, well, Mark was really depressing this morning? I'm not being really depressed. I'm telling you what's happening in the world. And as Christians, we need to know what's happening in the world because we are part of a kingdom that is meant to be affecting this and changing this. And you are meant to be part of a kingdom that is affecting this and changing this. And so, is it hopeless? Well, let's look, and I'm going to kind of focus in on a passage, one passage this morning. I'll go for a couple of tangents, but I'm going to focus in on 2 Corinthians chapter 4. And 2 Corinthians chapter 4 starts with, at verse 4, has a verse that I talk about quite a lot, particularly on Rock Solid when we're talking about your thought life and believers' authority and so on. And it says this, the God of this world, that's the enemy, Satan, he's got an agenda. And his agenda is he has blinded the minds, not blinded the eyes, blinded the minds, blinded and blocked out and brought darkness into the way people think. Man, he's doing a good job since 2010. Blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable. So here's why we should care, because they are unable to help themselves. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand. So not only are they unaware and can't see it, they don't understand it even when you tell them. Or they read this stuff. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God. So what that tells us is that the culture, what we're seeing in those surveys, what we're seeing in those results, the culture around us has been blinded. And if we don't ourselves walk in the light of the gospel, we may as well be blind too. The only thing that stops us falling into this is if we walk in the light of the gospel. And if we don't, we just say, well, I'm a Christian, it's fine, I'll just turn up on a Sunday and that'll be okay and I'll get on with my life. You may as well be blind, guys, because everything else you are surrounding yourself with is generated from this culture that is blinding people's thinking and blinding our decisions and blinding our choices and leading us down that path. And like when I was doing that opening bit, you were all nodding and saying, yeah, I feel hopeless, I feel powerless and all that sort of stuff. So it has an effect even on believers. And the only way we get away from that effect is if we walk in the light. If we walk in the ways that Jesus gave us. And I love Elinid because every so often, Elinid will send, she's a bit, pardon? It was your turn last week. Anyway, it's your turn again this week. It's Pick on Elinid month. Elinid sends me, every so often, quotes. She loves J. John. I love J. John. She loves J. John. She sends me quotes from J. John. And they're good. So anyway, she didn't send me this one, but when I read this one, I thought of Elinid. And here it goes. And so basically, he's talking about this topic. And this is what he says. On considering a further thought, that being the world has lost its reason, I realise there are now new complexities in swimming against the current, being a Christian. While we might once have imagined that we were engaged in swimming up some slow, steady flowing river, a more realistic image today is that we are in some windswept tidal estuary in which the waters are swirling chaotically. Today, the forces pressing upon us are strong in one direction, and tomorrow they're going in a different one. And that throws us. We have a great capacity to be thrown, particularly if we're not anchored. In fact, the Western world has indeed lost its reason because it's lost its rationale, its reason for existence. It is now ignorant not only of what's right and wrong, but of what it stands for. It's also lost its reason because it's become an intellectual chaos in which nothing is certain except uncertainty. What's sad about that is none of that is new. It's just coming more quickly. These aren't new things, but they are coming at us much more quickly than they have ever done before. Paul writes this, so continuing from what I said. But he writes this in, I said I was going to do a couple of little diversions. He writes this in his letter to the Romans, where he wrote to the churches in Rome on the kind of helping them understand what was going on in the world around them. And this is what he says. The world, they have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil and greed. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit and malice. They're gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant and boastful. They're senseless, faithless, heartless, merciless. And I think how you react to those verses will be really interesting to reveal where you are and what the Holy Spirit's prompting you to do next. Because if that's the condition of the world, that is blinded, then if you're not a Jesus follower, you would be thinking, well, why should I bother if Christians feel under pressure and that they can't cope with this world that I live in? Why should I bother? Well, we'll get to the answer before I get to the end of this message about why you should bother. But even before I do that, just think about those graphs that I showed you. Just think about that research. What they tell you about our world now and in the future. And if you're not sure where you are with Jesus, maybe you need to go, well, can we do better? Can we do better than this? Can we create a better world than this? A better world for you, a better world for others. How could we do that? So just hold on to near the end of this message, and maybe you'll find an answer to that question. But for us as believers, we have to decide whether we are going to engage with this problem or whether we're going to hide from this problem. Ultimately, we have to decide if we are going to do what Jesus asked us to do, which is to be for others more than we are for self. Because the thing that holds us back in the kingdom, in Jesus' church, is self. Self, where we build what we do and how we live as Christians around self. Instead of others in the body and others outside the body. So, if it doesn't bother you that the world's like that, then perhaps it reveals that the Holy Spirit's got some work to do. And if you're like me and you're going, I need to do something about this, then stay listening to the rest of the preach. Okay, here we go. Back to 2 Corinthians. Let's pick it up where I was before. Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God. Now, pick that up. First off, what we have is good news. That means we are good news carriers in a bad news world. So what we have, we shouldn't be ashamed of, because we have something that is helpful to people. And if it's helpful to people, I would feel a little bit guilty if we're not helping people, because I've got some good news. And in a world that has very little good news, a world that's hopeless, a world that feels powerless, a world where anxiety is spiking, depression is spiking, suicide is spiking, all those things amongst a younger generation, and I hold on to that good news, I'd feel a little bit guilty. But what we have, make no doubt about it, we have good news. And in good news, there is no bad news. And so that tells me that what we have is good for people. So when we ask this question, what am I for? What are you for? To be good for people. You see, what we have is positive, not negative, in a world that's set on negative. And if it's good news, it's designed to help, not make things harder. If it's positive, it's designed to reverse a negative culture. So that's kind of the first point. But let's not get ahead. I'll not get ahead of myself. What exactly is this good news that the world needs? What exactly is this about? Because we can't just go and make up our own versions of it, built around the things that we would like it to be. We actually have to make the good news actually the good news that we've been given. Because it's this good news where the power is and the ability to change things is. So what's this good news about? Right. Little diversion again. Matthew, the author of the first gospel that's in our Bibles. He begins his account of Jesus' ministry with these words. From that time, Jesus began to preach his message, the good news message. Turn away from your mistaken thinking, because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So this good news has to do with how we think, and something called the kingdom of heaven that operates in a different way to the kingdom that's currently in darkness. It's a different kingdom. And it has to do with changing thinking, changing culture, changing lives, changing the way we see God's world. And so when, not only that, but he says it's at hand. Turn away from mistaken thinking, because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. What does that mean? Well, when you look at what those words translated at hand means, they mean right in front of your face, stood right next to you. And if you want to put in modern terms, this is in your personal space. It's right here. The kingdom is right here. And what he was saying is that Jesus had brought something and birthed it that was different to the existing culture. And that culture is good news for everyone. Also, he's saying that the issue is around how people think, about their values, about their character, about the way they see things, about the basis on which they make decisions. That's where the issue is. That's the battleground. That's where these kingdoms come into contact. Because if your thinking is mistaken, if your thinking is in darkness, it leads people down dark routes and hopeless routes and powerless routes. But this good news is tied to something that is a new kingdom. And that is what Jesus preached. The good news Jesus preached, he called the message of the kingdom, or the message of the kingdom of heaven. It's about heaven invading earth through those who follow Jesus. It's about bringing the values and qualities and thinking and seeing and perspective of heaven to earth through those who follow Jesus. Now, sometimes when we hear this talked about, our thinking gets confused. Because we think whenever it says this word, the kingdom of heaven, we're thinking, well, heaven's a place that I go to one day when I die. So heaven's out there. So Jesus came to bring something that is out there, but one day I get to access, I get to go to. But the reality is that the kingdom of heaven is supposed to be right here, right now. And if you've been taught that the kingdom of heaven is about where you go to one day, then you probably think that that's the important thing in what Jesus is saying. I've come to bring you salvation. I've come to bring you eternal life. But the important thing is what Jesus is saying is that the kingdom is right here. And when the kingdom is operating and put into effect, it will change things. If we are not seeing change, it's not because the kingdom and the power of the kingdom is ineffective. It's because we're not thinking and seeing things and putting into action the ways of the kingdom. We're deciding on the basis of other things. Jesus also, Matthew records this, he said, and this is really kind of one of Jesus' biggie statements, really big. He said, seek first the kingdom of heaven. Seek first the kingdom of heaven. I don't know about you, but your mind probably runs on to the next bit of that verse. And all these things will be added unto you. But just that, seek first the kingdom of heaven. Seek first the kingdom of heaven. Is what I'm saying. We weren't given a choice in what we were supposed to seek first if we are following Jesus. It's not an optional. It's if you're following Jesus, this is how you live. You seek first the kingdom of heaven. And that is to be the principal goal of a Christian's life. To seek the things of heaven. To seek the ways, but also to be that kingdom in a world so that the world is changed by it. There isn't actually a room for fill a seat on a Sunday morning Christianity. That's not what Jesus taught. He taught whole life Christianity where we carry the kingdom and affect the world around us. That's what happened when the whole of society was against Christianity, the whole of an empire was against Christianity, and yet Christianity overcame. Bottom line for this series, Jesus is for others. And he wants us to be for him by being for others. Jesus is for others, and he wants us to be for him by being for others. Okay, back to 2 Corinthians. You see, we don't go around preaching about ourselves. Paul is saying, I'm not bigging myself up. I'm not telling you how great my ministry is. I'm not saying, come to me and go from there. I'm not trying to attract you. I'm not trying to, say it's all about me. In fact, I don't want it to be about me at all. Because if you haven't heard about Jesus, I'm not actually preaching the gospel. And when I say hear about Jesus, if all you're hearing is focused on you, or all you're hearing is focused on how great we are, then we've missed it. You should go away thinking about Jesus when you hear the message of the kingdom. So we don't go around preaching about ourselves. We preach that Jesus Christ is Lord, and we ourselves are servants for Jesus' sake. Now, here's the important thing about this. This positive for you and positive for everyone else kingdom is a place where a king reigns. There is a king who sits over our lives and over everything we're doing. He is the one that we live to please, because we said we're going to follow you. I made you my Lord. I'm going to follow you, and I'm going to do what you asked me to do, because he's king. And when Jesus talked about what kingdom was, he didn't have a geographical locality in mind. He had an authority in mind. It's not about which bit of land or how far your church or your extends or how far a country extends. It's about a question of authority. First and foremost, the kingdom is about authority. And what that means is, in this kingdom, the authority of Jesus the King is fully recognized and fully followed. That's it. That's the goal. That's the goal. And so when Paul uses this phrase, and he uses two phrases in this. The first one is Christ. We preach Christ. That word Christ is not a name. Did you know? Hopefully some of you knew that. When we say Jesus Christ, that's actually wrong. It's Jesus the Christ. Christ is not his surname. It's Jesus the Christ. It's his title. And when that word was used by people who understood a bit better than us what it meant, that word Christ means, in Hebrew, it's Messiah, same word, but Christ is the Greek word. Here's what it means, literally. The one who is anointed to be king. The King of Kings, God's final king, and the one who has all authority in God's eternal kingdom on heaven and in earth. That's what it means. So we're saying, when we say Jesus the Christ, we are saying Jesus is the one who has all authority. He's the King of Kings, God's final king. He reigns over an eternal kingdom, and I'm part of that kingdom. I'm part of his family, but I'm also part of his kingdom. And he's the king. So when the king says, do this, I do it. That's how they understood it. And then he uses this other word, Lord. So it's not enough just to call him the Christ, he's going to call him Lord as well. And you became a Christian by accepting and proclaiming Jesus was your Lord. That word Lord means supreme authority. Supreme authority. So we become Christians by saying, Jesus, I'm making you the supreme authority in my life. So what does that mean for us? It means that in this kingdom that we've chosen to live in, Jesus must be the final authority in what we do, what we say, and the decisions we make. And the way we live, and the way we love, and the way we react, and the way we care. Jesus must be the final authority. So in this time we live in, where time is short, we've got some catching up to do. We've all got some catching up to do. I've got some catching up to do. But when people live this way, like they did in the Roman Empire, it changes the culture around them. You know, living like this, having Jesus' character, loving your enemies, putting others first, living to serve others, living to help others, blessing those who hate you. That's what changes an empire. And that's what will change our world now. The kingdom is eternal and it's eternally powerful. It hasn't lost any power. It just needs that power applying and releasing. Because the kingdom as the final authority in believers' lives is what changes negative to positive. It will reset the world from negative to positive. That's what it's intended to do. So Paul says this, we now have this light, that's us, shining in our hearts. But we ourselves are like fragile clay jars containing a great treasure. This makes it clear that our great power is from God, not from ourselves. So if you're a Jesus follower, that's talking about you. And what it's saying about you is that you carry a light which illuminates and brings light into that darkness the enemy is used to blind minds. You're the light carrier. And Jesus' kingdom is for changing things. Jesus' kingdom is not for things remaining as they are while we get on with our life. Jesus' kingdom is for changing things. So how does it change things? Here's how the kingdom changes things. This light that we carry changes things. The kingdom being positive, so the kingdom brings hope into hopelessness. The kingdom brings power into powerlessness. The kingdom brings purpose into purposelessness. The kingdom brings stability into instability. The kingdom brings certainty into uncertainty. The kingdom brings an anchor in a storm when all the waves are crashing. It brings an others first attitude into a self-image driven society. The kingdom's really different, and that's why it's really powerful. So this is why Paul kind of wraps up what he's saying. He says this, and he says this despite, no matter how bad you've got it, this is what Paul's saying his life was like when he was preaching this good news that changed the Roman Empire. Okay? This is what his life was like. It's not hunky-dory. This is what he's saying. We are pressed on every side by troubles, but we, because we are positive, because we carry this life, we are not crushed. We're not giving in. We're not backing down. We're not giving up. We are perplexed. We don't understand. But we're not despairing because we have hope, because we have this light inside. We are hunted down, but we are never abandoned by God. He said he's with us always, and he will take us through. We get knocked down, but we will not be destroyed. Yes, we live under constant danger of death because we serve Jesus, so that the life of Jesus will be evident in our dying bodies. So we live in the face of death. Why? Because just like Jesus, and just like he asked every single follower his to be, we are doing this not for ourselves. We are doing this for you. This resulted in eternal life for others, for not you. You first, and then you spread it. What you have is for you, but it works for you when you are for others first. So he continues. But we continue to preach because and he's preaching the good news, because we have the same kind of faith the psalmist had when he said, I believed in God, so I opened my mouth and I talked about it, and I spoke, and I sang, and I went out there. All of this is for your benefit. I'm doing this for others. A Jesus follower lives and does things for others. All of this is for your benefit. And as God's grace reaches more and more people, there will be great thanksgiving and God will receive more and more glory. Now, that is, it might not seem it, because these are sometimes like familiar things, and they sound like Paul, so we kind of skim over it. But what he's just said there is incredibly radical. The power that changes the world is Christians who look like, act like, react like, and love like Jesus. That's what changes negative to positive. A kingdom that is not only for you, but for you living for others. It's a positive kingdom defined by what it is for more than it is defined by what it is against. So the question is, hey Mark, you've talked about the Roman Empire. Would this actually work now? Would this actually work now? Well, I've got one final graph to show you. This graph, that's the anxiety graph, the happiness graph. How it's changed since 1979. Believers who hold to the gospel are happy people, stable people, non-anxious people, people who've let go of the gospel and call themselves Jesus followers, secular liberals, secular conservatives. They are the ones that are experiencing this wave of hopelessness, this wave of anxiety, this wave of powerlessness. Let me finish with this. This is from a global report, recent global report called The Connected Generation, conducted by a research group called the Barna Group. And they surveyed 15,000 young adults, so those lower age groups, 15,000 young adults across 25 countries. So this is a worldwide thing. And they did that in partnership with the people who are funding it, called World Vision. Here's what they found. 51% of practicing Christians, so practicing Christians, people who are actually trying to live it out instead of just Sunday morning Christians, practicing Christians, or people who said they were Christians of nominal faith but never actually engaged, really. 51% of practicing Christians said they felt optimistic about the future. So based on that, 51% or more, the majority of this room should actually now be feeling optimistic about the future, which is completely contrary to where you should be in the absence of Jesus. Isn't that good news? Your optimism comes because you follow Jesus. You see things differently because you're thinking differently. And you're optimistic about the future. You've latched on that Bible sales are going upwards and going up rapidly amongst the younger generation. You've latched on to the fact there's now 2 million more people in church in the UK than there was 7 years ago. You've gone, we're on the move. We're changing things. We can move forward. And you're going, hands up, how do I play my part? How do I get involved in this? What can I do? What can I do? I'm not prepared to sit here anymore. I want to know what I can do to get with that and get helping people. Because I've got light inside of me that needs to come out. And 51% of us are saying that. 51% optimistic about the future. That's 34% managed to be optimistic with no faith. I don't know how they do that. And where are we at? And 43% of practicing Christians said they're more able to accomplish their goals. That's a really good thing. That's for you. You're more able to do what you set out to do than people of no faith. Why? Because you've got a focus and you've got a purpose and you're going at it positively with hope, knowing that you have a purpose and an ability to do things. Here's what the study also found. So let's stand, let's get ready to worship, because this is all good news. This is the good news we carry. This is what is changing our country right now, and we need to get on board with. The study found that practicing Christians were less likely to say they felt lonely and isolated, 16% of Christians say that, compared to those of no faith. 31% of people who have no faith feel lonely and isolated. Those who are uncertain about the future, no faith, 51%. Those with faith, Christians, 20%, 27%. We are more certain about our future. We know what we're here to do. We know what we're going to do, and we know where we're going. Amen.